I haven't aged a day since 1989. Time moved differently in the house of Dionysus, or maybe it didn't move at all. The outside world turned, the seasons shifted, presidents rose and fell, but inside these walls, the music never stopped. The candles never burned out. The champagne never ran dry. And I, 19 forever, untouched by time, drifted through it all like a ghost, my laughter blending with the echoes of many others who once believed they would be young forever. I came to New Orleans that winter chasing something I couldn't name. I was hungry, not for food, not even for love, but for something wilder, something that would shake me awake. I was tired of small-town stares, of narrow roads and predictable lives. New Orleans promised freedom. It promised excess. And the house of Dionysus, it promised eternity. I don't remember exactly how I found it, or how it found me. Maybe it was the way the streetlights flickered as I wandered the quarter that night, drunk on the thick air of invincibility. Maybe it was the stranger in the alleyway, whispering about a place where the party never ended, where youth was not borrowed but owned. Or maybe it was something deeper, something I was always searching for, calling me home. The door was unmarked, ordinary, and yet when I stepped inside, the world unraveled. The first thing I noticed was the light, soft, golden, dripping from chandeliers and sconces like honey. It coated everything in a warm, dreamlike glow, making even the shadows shimmer. Music pulsed from somewhere unseen, a perfect, endless melody that shifted with the mood of the room. Laughter rang out like a chorus, high and breathless, as bodies swayed together in an intoxicating rhythm of silk and sweat. It was beautiful, overwhelming, alive. Dionysus himself was the first to greet me. He was not a man, not really. He was a presence, a force, a god carved from shadow and wine. He smiled, and the room bent toward him. "Drink," he said, pressing a goblet into my shaking hands. His voice held the weight of centuries, the pull of something ancient and undeniable. "Drink and be free." And I did. The first sip was rapture. The second, surrender. After that, I stopped counting. I should have known better. I should have realized that nothing so perfect comes without a price. But I was 19, and I was tired of waiting for life to begin. And so I stayed. The house did not let me go. It was easy at first, too easy. Nights bled into each other, seamless, endless, a beautiful blur of velvet and heat. Time ceased to matter when the world inside these walls was always golden, always alive. There was no morning, no night, only the hum of pleasure, the thrill of 100 hands pulling you deeper, deeper into the dream. But dreams have edges, and eventually I began to feel them. At first it was small things. The way I could no longer recall the last time I saw the sun. The way the music, once intoxicating, now felt like a lullaby meant to keep me asleep. The way new faces arrived, young, beautiful, wide-eyed with wonder, only to fade into the crowd, forgotten, just like all the others. There were no mirrors in the house, no reflections, no reminders of the years we gave away. And yet, sometimes, late at night, when the revelry quieted to a soft hum, I felt it. The absence of time, pressing against my skin like a missing heartbeat, a hollow ache, a whisper of something lost. I was here for 36 years. I lived more nights than I could count. And yet, deep down, in the quietest corners of myself, I wondered, had I lived at all? The house was both my prison and my sanctuary, my ruin and my salvation. And I was beginning to wonder if I would ever find the strength to leave. Mardi Gras was always the house's greatest feast. Outside, the city pulsed with music, its streets overflowing with color and revelry. The scent of whiskey tangled in the humid air as beads rained from balconies, laughter rising in dizzying waves. But inside the house of Dionysus, the celebration was something else entirely. A thing of hunger, of seduction, of eternity waiting to claim new souls. The house knew when the time was right. It had a way of calling to the lost, the restless, the ones who longed to slip free of time's grasp. And tonight, as the doors swung open to welcome the night's newest arrivals, I saw him. Ethan. He couldn't have been older than 20. There was something about him, a recklessness in his step, a brightness in his eyes that hadn't yet dimmed. He was laughing, breathless, his cheeks flushed from the quarter's chaos. Strands of hair clung to his forehead, and when he turned, when his gaze flickered over the room, I saw it, the same look I must have worn the first time I stepped inside. Wonder, longing, the aching need to belong, and Dionysus already saw it. He moved toward Ethan like a shadow slipping through candlelight. The others, the ones who were here long enough to know better, parted for him without a sound. Dionysus did not rush. He did not need to. The house already begun its work. The music swelled, golden light pooling in slow, lazy waves, the air thick with pheromones and wine. The moment Ethan's eyes landed on Dionysus, the moment their gazes met, I saw the pull, the unraveling, the beginning of the end. I seen it before. I lived it. I should have looked away. I should have let it happen. But something inside me twisted, sharp and sudden, an ache I had not felt in decades, a need not for him, but for what he still had, a future. Ethan smiled, and Dionysus returned it, slow and knowing. A golden goblet appeared between them, its contents dark and shimmering. The cup was always full. It was always waiting. Drink and be free. I had not spoken those words aloud in years, but they still lived inside me. They whispered beneath my ribs, a memory sweet and rotting. Ethan reached for the goblet. I moved before I even realized I was moving. I was at his side, my hand brushing his, stopping him right before his fingers could close around the stem. "You should be careful what you drink in this place," I said, my voice lighter than it should have been. A joke. A warning. A desperate plea wrapped in silk. Ethan turned to me, startled at first, then grinning. "That's the whole point, isn't it?" Dionysus did not react. He only watched. Always watching. Always knowing. Ethan tipped his head, curious now. "You live here?" I hesitated. What was I supposed to say? "Yes, I live here. I have always lived here. I have never left, and I do not know if I can." Instead, I smiled. Something like that. He studied me. There was a sharpness to him beneath all the reckless beauty, an awareness most people lost too quickly in this place. It made my throat ache. It made me remember. Ethan turned back to Dionysus, to the cup still waiting between them. I saw it again. That moment, that breath where a choice could still be made, where he could still turn away. And I could not let him make the same mistake. But how do you save someone who doesn't know they need saving? Dionysus tilted his head, his gaze flickering to mine. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of it. A warning, a challenge, a question I wasn't sure I was ready to answer. "Are you really going to stop this? After all this time? After everything you gave up?" Ethan laughed, the sound bright, untouched by the decay curling beneath this place. "You're looking at me like you know me." Maybe I did. Or maybe I knew what he could become. Because once I was him. And once I wished someone would have saved me. I never tried to save anyone before. People came. People stayed. People disappeared into the house, their names slipping from memory like sand through fingers. I watched it happen for decades. Let it happen, because that was the way of things. The house was eternal, and I was part of it, a thread woven into its golden tapestry. But then there was Ethan. I found him again not long after our first meeting, leaning against a marble pillar, watching the room with something close to reverence. The light made him look soft, almost holy, and for a moment, I envied him. Not for his youth, not for his beauty, but for the way he still saw magic instead of a cage. I stepped beside him, close enough to see the glimmer of sweat on his collarbone. "Has it gotten to you yet?" I asked. He turned his head, grinning. "The wine?" "The house." Ethan laughed. "Oh, come on. You talk about this place like it's some kind of myth." I didn't laugh with him. "Isn't it?" He studied me, the grin slipping a little. And then, to my surprise, he said, "Maybe." I watched him as he watched the room, his expression flickering between fascination and something more distant, more hesitant. "How long are you planning to stay?" I asked. He shrugged. "I don't know. Long enough to forget about real life for a while." Something twisted in my chest. "Forget?" Ethan exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "You wouldn't get it." "Try me." He hesitated, then took a sip from the crystal glass in his hand. "It's stupid." "Tell me anyway." A pause. Then quietly, "I don't know what I want to do with my life." I blinked. Of all the things I expected, that was not one of them. "I dropped out of school last year," he went on, voice quieter now, like he didn't want the house to hear. "Spent months working bullshit jobs just to get by. Everyone back home thinks I'm fucking up. They're probably right." He let out a sharp breath, shaking his head. "I thought maybe if I came here, if I got lost for a little while, I'd figure it out." I once thought the same thing. I stared at him, feeling something crack open in me, something raw and dangerous. I was 19 when I came here, just as uncertain, just as lost. But Ethan, he still had time. He could leave. He could be something other than this. He looked at me then, his expression unreadable. "What about you?" "What about me?" "How long have you been here?" I wanted to lie. I almost did. But the words that slipped out weren't the ones I expected. "A long time." His brow furrowed. "Like a few months?" I swallowed. "Longer." He studied me, something shifting behind his eyes. "Years?" The house breathed around us, listening, waiting. Dionysus was watching. I could feel it in the way the air thickened, the way the shadows curled at the edges of the room. Ethan tilted his head, his curiosity growing. "How old are you?" I could have told him the truth. I wanted to. But the house whispered, slipping into my veins like warm honey. "You are 19. You have always been 19. You will always be 19. I looked away. Ethan's fingers brushed mine for a second, a fleeting touch that shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. God, it did. "You don't have to stay here," I said, my voice barely more than a breath. He smiled, easy, oblivious. "I know." But he didn't. Not yet. And I was running out of time. Somewhere across the room, Dionysus shifted in his golden throne, watching, waiting, as if he already knew the ending. I found Ethan again, on the marble steps, head tipped back as he laughed at something I hadn't heard. His cheeks were flushed, his eyes bright with wine and delight. Around him, the house pulsed with light, with music, with the slow, hypnotic drag of eternity pulling him under. I wanted to shake him. I wanted to beg him to see. Instead, I forced myself to sit beside him, letting the air settle between us like an unspoken thing. "You should go," I said. He smiled lazily, turning toward me. "Go where?" "Anywhere. Just not here." Ethan huffed a soft laugh. "You're still on that?" I didn't smile. His grin faltered slightly. "What is this really about?" "Everything." I leaned forward, searching his face, searching for something that hadn't been taken yet. "You don't belong here," I said. "You still have—" I swallowed hard. "You still have a life out there." Ethan shook his head. "Why are you so afraid of being happy?" I exhaled sharply. "This isn't happiness." His expression shifted, something between amusement and frustration. "Then what is it?" I looked around us, at the golden candlelight flickering against the walls, at the beautiful people caught in the dance of forever, at the wine that never stopped pouring, the music that never stopped playing. A cage, I thought. A dream that turns to dust the moment you try to hold it. I know what this place does, I said, my voice quieter now. It keeps you in a haze. It makes you forget. You think you're free, but you're not. You're just here, and you never get to be anything else outside this moment. Ethan studied me for a long moment, searching my face. Is that what happened to you? Yes. I was like you once, I admitted. I came here young, lost, wanting more. My voice caught, but I forced myself to keep going. I thought this was magic. I thought I found something, a way out, a way forward. He nodded, watching me carefully. And now? I let out a slow breath. Now I don't remember who I was before this, and I don't know if I'll ever become anything again, or if it's too late for me. Something flickered across his face. Uncertainty, hesitation. A tiny crack in the illusion. Please let it be enough. A shadow passed over us. Dionysus. He moved like something otherworldly, effortless, like the house itself breathed in time with him. When he smiled, it was golden and knowing. Robert, he purred, you seem troubled. I stiffened, but I didn't move. Ethan glanced between us, confusion creasing his brow. Is everything okay? Dionysus didn't look away from me. He didn't need to. You would not try to poison our newest guest, would you? Dionysus asked, his voice smooth, gentle. But there was something else beneath it. Warning. Ethan laughed softly, oblivious. He's just worried about me. Dionysus tilted his head, still watching me. Worried about you? Or about himself? My pulse quickened. I knew what he was doing. Tell me, Robert, Dionysus murmured. If you are so eager to leave, why haven't you? Ethan's curiosity sharpened. He turned to me. Yeah. Why haven't you? My throat tightened. Dionysus smiled. Because he knows what awaits him. The moment he steps outside these walls, the years will come for him. All of them. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? Dionysus leaned closer, his voice velvet and honey. He's not 19, my dear. Not even close. Ethan's gaze snapped back to me. The silence stretched between us. Robert. His voice was quieter now, unsure. How old are you? I swallowed, my hands curling into fists. Dionysus was right. The moment I left this place, I would be 55. Time would devour my youth. The weight of lost decades would come crashing down in an instant. And I was terrified. I didn't know if I would survive it. Maybe my time came long ago, and the only thing keeping me alive was the house of Dionysus. Dionysus touched my shoulder, his fingers warm, gentle, familiar. Stay, he whispered. You are safe here. You are whole. I closed my eyes. The house breathed around me. The air shimmered with temptation. Memories flooded my mind. The laughter, the pleasure, the nights that never ended. I could stay. I could pretend a little longer. Then Ethan moved, the smallest shift. And when I opened my eyes, I saw him. Really saw him. Young. Alive. Still untouched by this place. He knew this wasn't right. And I knew too. I already lost so much of my life. I would not let him lose his too. I turned back to Dionysus, my pulse pounding in my ears. No. My voice was hoarse, but steady. Dionysus arched a golden brow. No? I swallowed. We're leaving. Ethan inhaled sharply beside me. Dionysus only smiled, and the house began to stir. The house did not want to let us go. The moment we moved, the corridors twisted, the gilded archways stretching into infinity, swallowing the exits. I pulled Ethan forward, my grip on his hand tight, unrelenting. But every turn led us back inside. Back to the laughter, the golden candlelight, the scent of spiced wine and everything our dreams were made of. The house breathed, the walls expanding and contracting as if it were a living thing, shifting itself to trap us inside. Ethan's breath came quickly beside me. What the hell is happening? He's trying to keep us here. He cursed under his breath. That's not possible. I almost laughed. Possible? The house wasn't bound by the rules of the outside world. It was a thing of want, of indulgence, of eternal hunger, and it wanted us. The floor rippled beneath our feet. A doorway shimmered ahead of us, open, waiting. I didn't trust it, but we had no other choice. I grabbed Ethan's hand. Run! We bolted. The hallway stretched before us longer than it should have been, the walls shifting like liquid gold. The laughter around us grew distant, warping into something else. Whispers, please, voices I forgot long ago. Stay, come back, please. My chest ached, my breath sharp and uneven, but I didn't stop. I would not stop. Then, he was there. Dionysus stepped into our path, waiting, arms open like a lover welcoming us home. I skidded to a stop, nearly pulling Ethan off balance. Dionysus tilted his head, his golden eyes unreadable. Leaving so soon? Ethan tensed beside me. Get out of our way. Dionysus barely glanced at him. His gaze was on me. Only me. You don't have to do this, he murmured. His voice was smooth as honey, soft as silk. This is your home. No. My voice was hoarse. This is my prison. Dionysus's expression flickered for a second. Something ancient, something wounded. Then, just as quickly, the warmth returned. I have given you everything, he whispered. I have kept you young, kept you beautiful, loved you, adored you, worshipped you. My breath caught. Stay, he was saying without saying it. Stay, stay, stay. My body ached with want, with memory. The weight of years I denied pressed against my chest, threatening to crush me. If I left, I would be old. If I left, I would be forgotten. No more golden nights, no more pleasure that stretched beyond time. I faltered. The doorway was ahead of me. My hand was on the handle. I hesitated. Dionysus stepped closer. His fingers brushed my cheek, soft, reverent. Stay, he whispered. Just a little longer. I closed my eyes. I could stay. I could pretend a little longer. Then I felt Ethan's hand tightening around mine. I turned and he was there, his chest rising and falling, his pulse thrumming beneath his skin, his eyes sharp, real, and alive. I'm not leaving without you, he said. I let out a shaky breath, unsure of who was saving who at this point. Dionysus exhaled, shaking his head. You will regret this, Robert. Maybe. But I already lost 36 years to this house. I already regretted it more than I thought possible. I would not lose one more day. I gripped Ethan's hand tighter. Then let me regret it. And together, we stepped outside. The cold air hit me first, sharp and real, pressing against my skin like 1,000 tiny needles. My breath came ragged, my pulse a frantic drumbeat in my chest, and then, the weight of time crashed down on me. It was not gentle. It did not creep or whisper. It devoured me. Pain bloomed deep in my bones. My spine curled under an invisible force, my joints stiffening, cracking. I stumbled forward with a strangled gasp, my free hand gripping my chest as though I could hold myself together, as though I could stop the inevitable. I fell to my knees and threw up on the alley tarmac. The skin on my hands darkened, lines etching themselves across my knuckles like fragile cracks in porcelain. It took a few minutes to gather myself to walk away from where we were. My reflection flickered in the darkened window of a shop across the street, and I saw him. A man, not a boy, not a reckless thing made of light and hunger. A man, 55 years old. My hair streaked with silver, my face lined with years I refused to wear. My body, heavier, slower, aching in ways I didn't expect. The house kept me frozen in time. Now, time reclaimed me. I gasped, pressing a shaking hand to my chest. The sensation of it, of breathing, of feeling, of hurting, it was unbearable and exquisite all at once. I was alive. And then, Ethan spoke. "Robert?" I squeezed my eyes shut. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't bear the moment when the wonder in his gaze would falter, when he would see me for what I was. Only a man. A man who wasted himself in the arms of something that never truly loved him. A man who traded eternity for something fragile and fleeting. I forced myself to let go of his hand. After all, this was the goal. To keep him away from all things which decay. "You should go," I rasped. My voice was different, thicker, older, real. Silence stretched between us. Then, warmth, fingers against my own. Ethan didn't step away. He didn't run. He didn't flinch. He held my hand. I finally turned to him. His expression was unreadable at first, eyes searching, breath unsteady. And then he smiled. The same way he did before, as if nothing changed. A broken sound left me, something between a laugh and a sob. Behind us, the house of Dionysus slowly faded. The golden candlelight dimmed. The music wound away. The doors, the archways, the endless halls, they all dissolved into shadow, into nothing. And then, it was gone. Vanished into the night like a dream that unraveled upon waking. I exhaled, long and slow, as the world around us came into focus. The distant wail of a saxophone. The rhythmic pound of drums. Laughter, wild and uninhibited. The scent of alcohol and sweat. The crush of bodies moving through the streets. Mardi Gras was still alive. The world didn't stop turning. Life went on without me. I let out a shaking breath. "I don't know how to—" Ethan squeezed my hand. "Don't look back," he said. I swallowed hard. The house would always be there, waiting, just beyond the veil. The temptation would never fully leave me. The hunger, the ache for what once was. It would whisper to me in quiet moments, try to lure me home. But this pulse of real life, this breath in my lungs, this boy standing beside me refusing to let go, this was real. I closed my eyes, and I did not look back.